Call two speakers to the front now so that we can move through the speakers more quickly. Julie Scott will be first, followed by Victor Furman. So Mr. Furman, if you would also make your way toward the mic and be prepared to speak when Ms. Scott is done.
Hi, I'm Julie Scott, town clerk for the town of Barker, and I'm a landowner who loves my land. I am the fourth generation of my family to own property in northern Broome County. I will repeat, I love my land. If I thought for 1 minute that gas drilling could destroy something I hold so dear, I would be the first in line against it. After 3.5 years of study, research, and fact-finding, let me repeat, fact-finding. There is no proof anywhere that gas drilling is unsafe or that it will hurt our environment. With proper...
Please, ladies and gentlemen, this is not helpful. We know that emotions run high here, but that is just understood. You don't have to comment during every pause in a speaker's comments, so please refrain from your applause.
With proper oversight, everyone will benefit. I am sick to death of the scare tactics, propaganda, misinformation, and outright lies being printed, reported, and shoved down our throats by those opposed to gas drilling. These drilling opponents will never be satisfied. Their tactic is to delay, delay, delay until it is too late. Please don't let this happen. I am convinced gas drilling is the answer to so many problems facing New York. It will bring industry, jobs, and taxes paid by the gas industry that will help New York at the state and local levels. New York State is in debt, our county is in debt, our municipalities are in debt, our landowners are in debt and being squeezed to the point of extinction. You have the answer to our problems in front of you. Please do not delay any longer. Gas drilling will help the landowners in my town. Taxes raise every year, but our incomes do not. We have landowners in our town who will not survive another year or more wait on gas drilling. Myself and countless others will lose our land because we can't pay the ever-rising taxes. We will be leaving New York, but not by choice, because we love this area and our land, but by the absurdity, delay, misinformation, misrepresentation, and a state government who can't see the truth, not even when the answer is looking them straight in the face. Gas drilling will be a benefit to all New Yorkers. Our state government needs gas drilling now. Our local government needs gas drilling now. And yes, we, your hardworking, landowning, tax-paying, voting upstate New Yorkers need gas drilling now. Finish this up, no more delay. 3.5 years is enough.
Thank you. Mr. Furman will be followed by Charles Maurisse. Mr. Furman.
Thank you very much for coming to Broome County, once called the Industrial Valley. Now I'm not so sure. And with that, I'd like to do a roll call. IBM, EJ's, Singer Link, Buckme Myers, Singer Sewing Machine, all gone. Tens of thousands of jobs in New York State, gone. Tens of thousands of jobs in Broome County, gone. According to the EPA, NAFTA has cost almost 1 million United States jobs since 1994, a promise that was supposed to bring jobs. The U.S. is currently making the same agreement with South Korea called Chorus. They're planning to take 700,000 U.S. jobs lost to Mexico, lost to South Korea. 60.8% with computer and electronics being 22% of that. Drilling for jobs cannot be sent overseas. You cannot dig up the Marcellus Shale and give it to the Chinese, to the Mexicans. It's here, it's for us. And we need these jobs now. Like I said, we used to be the Industrial Valley. I agree with Mayor Matt Ryan. There is other job opportunity in Binghamton, New York. It's called construction. They are now tearing down EJ buildings all the way from Binghamton to Endicott. They tore down GAF, 15 acres of vacant land. They've torn down behind Agway, Kroll Manufacturers, another 10 acres of empty acreage. We need to make sure that we bring jobs back to New York State. We need to make sure that the people in Binghamton, the people in Broome County have jobs to go to. Just recently in our newspaper, there was an article about how people are coming from all over the state because in Broome County it's easy to get food stamps and welfare. That needs to change. We need to change that through natural gas drilling, and we need to have it now. Excuse me while I catch my breath. I have emphysema. It'll take about a minute. If the regulations that I have seen do have problems with them, and I think everybody agrees there are problems with the regulations. You've done a remarkable job to date. We need to continue on that path to make sure our regulations are done right. The setbacks are too great in some areas. Worrying about a bird in a grass field is kind of, I don't know how that got into the SGEIS, but that affects everything from Norwich to the Susquehanna River. And that's just not right because one, the bird is not an endangered species, and two, there is millions and millions of acres of state forest land that them birds can take a fly to. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Marcy, and he will be followed by Karen Matusik. I'm sorry, did Mr. Marcy? You're next, sir. Ms. Matusik, you follow him.
Well, it's Charlie Manasseh. It's been murdered worse than that before. Broome County landowner. Okay, now selling lot number 87, and what am I bid? 5, who bid 10,000? 10 now, but I want 15, 15, but I want 20. Sold $20,000. Buyer number 32 from Texas, Oklahoma, out-of-state speculator. Hundreds of properties will be sold for back taxes that are advertised in today's Binghamton press. Sold here at this location on this stage. You can't pay your taxes without a job or income. The gas companies will pay hundreds of thousands of dollars in property taxes to school districts, villages, towns, and county governments, fire districts, etc. And thousands of dollars will go to New York State to pay DEC regulators and other administrators. The revised SGEIS calls for no drilling in protected grass or forest lands from April to August to protect mating and nesting birds. I'd like to add another bird, the hairy-chested nutscratcher. Okay? I will not open my shirt. You know what bird I mean. Okay? I'm glad a regulation was not passed 350 million years ago to protect the Tyrannosaurus Rex. Okay? Other regulations already protect our plants and birds. We don't need more. Delete those redundant regulations. Let's protect and promote upstate New York. Let us develop, use our natural gas for our well-being, our jobs, our taxes, our country. Please add a provision to the SGEIS. Those who are against drilling should no longer be allowed to heat their own homes and businesses with natural gas.
Again, folks, please wait to the end of the comments.
We have been delayed 3.5 years. 3.5 years is enough. 5, but I want 10, 10, but I want 15. You lose your home and your property to a bird. Thank you.
Ms. Matusik, and you will be followed by by Ross Horowitz.
That's a hard act to follow. Good afternoon and thank you. My name is Karen Matusik and I'm the Government Relations Manager for the Appalachian Division of XTO Energy. XTO is a subsidiary of ExxonMobil Corporation, and together we are proud to be the largest natural gas producer in the United States. XTO holds leases to approximately 43,000 acres of land in Broome and Delaware counties. We support the detailed comments that will be submitted by IOGA and the New York State Petroleum Council, but my testimony today will focus on several important high-level issues. XTO applauds the state's fundamental recognition that the tremendous economic and employment benefits of shale gas development can occur here in New York without harming public health and the environment. Thousands of New York citizens have waited for more than 3.5 years for the jobs and economic growth that shale gas development can bring. In that regard, we greatly appreciate the patience and understanding of our leaseholders here in New York. XTO strongly supports reasonable regulations and enforcement because the approach assures the public that sound operational practices will be universally applied by all operators. Shale development and environmental protection can and have coexisted. The best means for a state to strike a balance is to base its regulations on sound science and true risks. Regulations that impose costs but serve no true risk management purpose will hinder economic development. and this occurs, we feel, in several areas of the DEC's proposed regulations. First, the regulations will ban wide areas of New York from development through large setback requirements and the exclusion of certain watersheds. Such exclusions do not rest upon any true risk management principle and undermine the foundation of the whole regulatory program. We urge you to remove these unnecessary exclusions. Second, certain aspects of the proposed regulations improperly rely on worst-case scenarios because they should not supersede or contradict existing data. DEC's reliance on these worst-case respecting water use and air emissions rather than using real existing data results in restrictive regulations that would provide no benefit. Third, we urge DEC to work with the DRBC to carve out appropriate roles for regulatory oversight so operators do not confront costly, overlapping, and potentially conflicting requirements in that watershed. And fourth, we urge you to remove the provision that would require development planning to be consistent with local regulation. Localities do have legitimate zoning interests, but the legislature has reserved the basic regulation of development to the state through oil and gas statute, and the DEC's regulations should not circumvent this legislative decision. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Mr. Horowitz, and you will be followed by Sandra Dans. Sandra Dans will be the next speaker.
Ross Horowitz, Danby, New York.
Sir, could you please hold your comments until the disturbance is put down? Thank you.
Campaigning in Ithaca, Andrew Cuomo promised to return New York to the Empire State, and in answer to my direct question said he would protect all New Yorkers' drinking water. That drinking water was sacrosanct. I voted for him. I would like to first comment on these two campaign promises. Drinking water is drinking water is drinking water. Mother Nature doesn't recognize the arbitrary aquifer distinctions in the SGEIS, and there is no only sacrosanct for 2 years, nor is there sacrosanct for some. In the Empire State, the gas industry would not sit at the table and the DEC would not be directed to mitigate by ignoring. There is no mitigating without risk analysis. If it can't be mitigated, it shouldn't be regulated, it should be banned. Governor Cuomo promised to return New York to the Empire State. Instead, by rushing to welcome the gas industry to the Marcellus Shale, he offers us an occupied state followed by a failed state. Advertising by the gas industry uses wish-based facts and bought science to arrive at belief-based conclusions. Commissioner Martens reportedly believed that large-volume slick-water horizontal fracking could be done safely. The gas industry can fool investors, gullible investors, a few in the public, and even some politicians, but it can't fool Mother Nature. By limiting consideration to individual wells, the SGEIS is structurally unable to deal with cumulative issues. Therefore, the DEC will not see that the gas industry's extraction compressors and pipelines require an infrastructure that is incompatible with agriculture, tourism, higher education, a healthy population, and the region's drinking water. Judging by the reckless speed that Governor Cuomo is moving agencies under his control to start the permitting process with only the appearance of knowledge and enforceable oversight, it seems that Governor Cuomo, as captain of the ship of state, has charted a course down the river toward Niagara Falls. In 1989, then Governor Mario Cuomo listened to concerned citizens and reversed his position in favor of the Shoreham nuclear power plant, agreeing to keep the completed plant from becoming operational. We now need that level of wisdom and courage from Governor Andrew Cuomo. We hope and pray the apple never falls far from the tree.
Thank you. Sandra Dans, and you will be followed by Ilene Mamlon.
My name is Sandra Davis. I am a landowner and resident of Deposit in Delaware County. My family owns 55 unleased acres, courtesy of the 3.5-year moratorium on natural gas development. If the regulations put forth in the SGEIS stay the way they are now written, this injustice to our property rights will continue, as we will never have the opportunity to lease our land and our mineral rights. This means that my family, and many like it, could be faced with the impossible decision to have to move from our homes, our land, our community, and possibly even our state, because few can afford to live here in New York without the jobs and economic benefits natural gas development will bring. Why do these regulations impact my community so much? And even more so than other communities in upstate New York, because Delaware County is the home of the Cannonsville Reservoir. This may sound like a nice thing to have nearby, but it comes with its own challenges and deep-reaching costs to our community. When the reservoir was established in 1965 in order to build this huge body of water that supplies New York City with its drinking water, they had to demolish several towns. This includes moving 9 cemeteries, all for New York City to have water, while Delaware County maintains the burden. Today, we still feel the effects of the reservoir coming to be here. We cannot see the reservoir, we cannot use the reservoir for recreation without overcoming extreme hurdles because it flows to New York City unfiltered. So we receive more of the benefits. So we receive none of the benefits of its intrusion on our community. We especially feel the pinch in our property taxes, as the destruction of a village for this construction left the void in the tax base of the county. Now, after everything we have sacrificed for New York City, you are telling me, because I live near the watershed, my property may not be leased or drilled for natural gas because of a 4,000-foot setback for the reservoir? Let me tell you that nothing about this relationship our two communities have is fair or just, and this only manages to deepen that parasitic relationship. We should not be punished for what the city did years ago. The residents of Delaware County have been punished and have paid enough. It is time for New York City to take on responsibility for their own water and pay their share of the expenses. If the DEC wants to stop me from utilizing my minerals, it is about time they were compensated for our carrying New York City's burden. I have brought with me a rough estimate of what that cost will be solely for my family, and my neighbors deserve the same retribution. First, there is the upfront cost of what I stand to lose from not being able to lease, which is $275,000, using a very conservative figure of $5,000 per acre. Next, the state will have to pay annually a very conservatively estimated total of $1.5 million in royalties. I can't get the rest done, so 3.5 years is long enough. Let's drill now and drill safely. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Ilene Mamlon, and you will be followed by Clark Rhodes.
My name is Ilene Mamlon. I'm a statewide board member of Citizen Action of New York, a membership organization that advocates for social, racial, economic, and environmental justice, with chapters or affiliates in 7 communities throughout New York State. I also chair Citizen Action's Southern Tier chapter. For the reasons I discussed below, Citizen Action is totally opposed to hydrofracking in New York State. However, today I speak not just as a representative of Citizen Action's over 20,000 members, but also as the 30-year resident of Broome County, whose quality of life will be seriously harmed by this practice. I will mention some of our concerns. First, the draft EIS has not addressed the numerous and complex health and environmental risks represented by hydrofracking to the residents of the region. We all know that millions of gallons of wastewater come back from these wells that is often laced with highly corrosive salts, carcinogens like benzene, and radioactive elements like radium. And of course, also in this mixture are the hazardous materials from the hydrofracking process itself. Since the exact composition of the so-called process of this produced water is a trade secret. It is clear that DEC cannot assure the public that the process can be made safe. The lack of a public health risk assessment alone makes the draft EIS fatally flawed. As the Sierra Club and others have pointed out, the ban on fracking in New York City and Syracuse watersheds alone amounts to an admission by the DEC that the risks of this process are unacceptable. One standard should apply to all water resources throughout the state. Since the draft EIS has not adequately considered the impact of large-scale hydrofracking on local resources such as municipal wastewater treatment facilities in Rhodes throughout upstate New York, as well as the full economic impacts on local tourism and agriculture. Third, we simply do not believe that the state government will be able to meet the enormous regulatory burden necessary to protect the public from the hazards of hydrofracking, especially in this tight economic climate. And finally, we cannot forget the impact on homeowners and landowners like myself. DEC has projected that there will be 21,000 wells in Broome and Tioga counties over the next 30 years. This number of wells will cause serious impacts on landowners and other residents who happen to live near drill sites. The 500-foot setback is simply not sufficient. I am extremely concerned about the possibility of the leaking of wastewater fluid from gas wells and open waste pits onto my land and my pond.
Thank you, ma'am.
I fear that we will have to move.
Thank you. Clark Rhodes, and you will be followed by Wes Ernsberger. Harold. Mr. Evans.
My name is Clark Rhodes. I'm from Worcester, New York. Either there is deliberate dishonesty by Alpha Geoscience and the DEC in ignoring the work of Dr. Jacoby, or just poor science. I deal with Chapter 4 geology only. I'll go to my conclusions first. That there should be no hydrofracking in or near the town of Worcester, as Worcester's water comes from an aquifer at the bottom of a valley which runs along a major fault line. 2, there should be no hydrofracking in South Worcester, as the Charlotte Valley water comes from an aquifer at the bottom of a valley which runs along another major fault line, and the Charlotte Creek communicates directly with the Susquehanna River. 3, there should be no hydrofracking in Delaware or Greene County until it is ascertained that there are no geological fault connections between them and New York City aquifers, as hydrofracking fluid threatens to migrate due to existing faults. 4, the revised SGEIS is fatally flawed and should be discarded until Jacoby's maps are used in place of 4.13 McKendree 1977 map, or new and complete study using the latest scientific instruments and methods in all of New York State. 5, until the most modern science is used, there should be no hydrofracking in Otsego County or anywhere else in New York State using figure 4.13, a 35-year-old map. It is a disgrace to the DEC and Governor Cuomo and an insult to the intelligence of New Yorkers. The attached are figure 1 and 2, R.D. Jacoby, Technophysics, volume 353, year 2002, page 75 to 113. Figure 4.13, 4.15, table 4.2, page 30 and 31 come from the DEC Chapter 4 Geology. EPA document number E816-R-R-04-003, page 4 through 12. From Jacoby. These and other closely spaced fractures may provide pathways for upward methane and radiogas migration after hydrofracking. Similarly, high-angle faults may provide upward pathways for pressurized, contaminant-laden hydrotracking fluids to reach freshwater aquifers. Otsego County is lined in black from the EPA document, which indicates that fracture fluids often takes a step-stair transport path through the natural fracking system. If Cuomo said he was going to protect our water, if he can't protect our water, he can't become president.
I'd like to call the following speakers at this time: Jerry Russell, Craig Sautner, Wes Gillingham, Walter Hang, Howard Hanner, Louis Allstet, Nicole Dillingham, Caitlin Pixley, Reverend William Kiefer, and Hazel Brandt.
And our next speaker is Wes Ernsberger, who will be followed by Christy Everett.
I would like to focus on the effect of hydraulic fracturing on climate change. Climate change is arguably the most serious problem facing humanity. Even though we are still in the early stages, climate change is already having a serious detrimental effects worldwide. These effects vary dramatically by geography. In our area, climate change is increasing the amount and intensity of rainfall, making severe flooding more likely. As a case in point, we have endured two 100-year floods here in just 5 years. The result? Serious economic losses and disrupted lives. Fortunately, New York State recognizes the seriousness of climate change and has begun to respond. Executive Order 24 established a goal of reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 80% by the year 2050 and also created a Climate Action Council to guide this transition. The Climate Action Council issued an interim report in November of 2010. One of the key conclusions in their report is that in order to meet the 80% reduction target, that fossil fuel combustion that free vents carbon into the atmosphere will have to be phased out. What this means is that further production and use of fossil fuels is fundamentally incompatible with the actions that are needed to effectively mitigate climate change. Accordingly, the development of our shale gas resource would make it that much harder for New York to achieve its 80% reduction by 2050 goal. It would also require a large investment in infrastructure, an investment that would ultimately be wasted on a dead-end technology. If we are to take effective action to mitigate climate change, we must use our limited resources wisely. As stated in the Climate Action Report, 2 key ways to do this are to invest in energy efficiency and renewable energy. In conclusion, what is best for New York and for all of humanity is the no action alternative described in Section 9.1 of the revised SGEIS. That is, fracking should not be allowed in New York State. The evidence is compelling that it cannot be done safely with current procedures and technology, but even if it could, the climate change implications clearly tell us that we had better not do it.
Thank you. Christy Everett. And the next speaker will be Jerry Russell.
Hello, my name is Christy Everett. I live in Vestal, New York. I grew up in Susquehanna County, Pennsylvania, on a rented farm. As a child, I was rarely inside. I spent my days in the fields, in the woods, at the creek, always outside. I did work like haying, chopping wood, building fence, and I also did things that were more fun, like climbing trees and swimming. Later in life, I got a degree in geology from Cortland State so that I could teach because I wanted to share my love of nature with young people. Some of my hobbies also relate to my love of nature. I grow organic gardens, compost, and raise chickens for eggs. And we generate all of our own electricity with solar. I hike through the fields and woods every single day. Another of my hobbies is related to history. That hobby is genealogy. I think that genealogy and history are both important tools for learning. From my genealogy research, I have learned that there were many farmers in my family as far back as pre-colonial times. Farmers, whether then or now, are good stewards of the land that they use to feed us all. Others in my family contributed to their communities in different ways. My great-grandfather founded the Blind Institute here in Binghamton. As you know, immigrants have come to this country for the freedoms it offers. Some immigrants came for religious freedom, some for the opportunity to own land. Still others, excuse me, like my husband's Italian immigrant ancestors, came simply for the opportunity for work and for food. From history, I have learned that the natural gas industry here in New York State has worked safely and efficiently for more than 100 years. I know that they have fracked thousands of wells throughout this country and have an industry record that gives me no reason to fear their continued presence here in New York State. Most of us here today in support of safe gas drilling have worked, have paid taxes, and have been good stewards of our lands for many years, if not for many generations. We want the opportunities for jobs and for the American dream the same way our ancestors did when they made that life-changing decision to make America their home. We want our communities to thrive so our children may have a future here. I don't take the issue of gas development lightly, but I support Governor Cuomo and Commissioner Martens in their efforts to make New York open for business to the gas industry to continue safe gas drilling. Thank you.
Thank you. Jerry Russell, and you'll be followed by Craig Sauntner.